can we just talk about the process? Like, what kind of pain are we walking into here? What's the, if I'm wanting to go and buy my first laundromat, what's the process I go through to get an SBA loan?
Sure. So I would say the initial part isn't that painful at all. From you, we're going to get 3 years of tax returns. If you have any other businesses, we're going to get business tax returns for those other entities. If you have any other businesses, you're going to have put together a debt schedule. But if you're just a W-2 employee, just 3 years of tax returns. Form 413, which is a personal financial statement. Form 1919, which is kind of like a loan application, an SBA loan application. Resume, and then business plan. And then from the seller, we need 3 years of tax returns and a year to date. That's what we need initially. That's usually enough to get a term sheet. Once we get the term sheet and you sign the term sheet, then typically the bank processor takes over. And then there's going to be other, obviously we're going to have to do inventory. You're going to have to make a list of what inventory is there, the equipment, serial numbers on the equipment, right? We're going to have, if there's any accounts receivable, things like that, there's forms for all of that. But once we get the term sheet, you sign it, it goes to the processor. Processor then has a checklist. You're working with a processor at the bank or the credit union. You're going through that. They're doing in the back end. They're doing like pulling tax transcripts and things from the IRS. Depends if there's real estate. We're going to do an appraisal. We're going to do a phase one. If there's no real estate, we're not going to do that. You're going to have to get a copy of the lease. The SBA, the bank usually has a form they want the landlord to sign. Things like that. But it's just a back and forth, and it's a process. Anytime you get a commercial or business type of loan, unless it's a no-doc loan, it's a process. These things take a while to do. If it's a small SBA Express, sometimes you can close these a little bit quicker than the full 7A type of loans. So they have small 7A loans, SBA 7A loans, they have Express loans, and then they have regular 7A loans. So you can have a total aggregate of $5 million of SBA financing. Now, we can talk about this later, but some people build their own facilities or buy their buildings, and they use another product called the SBA 504. And if you know about the SBA 504, you can do it's a first and second. So you can do like much larger deals. And so only the second part is the SBA guaranteed piece. So I can buy a $12 billion facility if I wanted to with an SBA loan. Senior debt is 50% of the total project cost, and the SBA piece is 40%. You get 90% financing, potentially. But that's the 504. So going back to the process, once all the processing documents are in, you get a loan commitment at that time. And then once the loan commitment is in, you get assigned a closer at the bank. And the closer then has more paperwork, back and forth, back and forth. For example, right before I got on this call, I'm financing an acquisition of a painting company, no real estate involved. And the bank pulled transcripts from the seller's tax returns to make sure they were filed and they're legitimate. And their 2020 wasn't filed. So they had to go back and why wasn't this filed? Somehow it didn't get filed. And so it was a simple fix. But those are the kind of things that happen in between accounts receivable. There's documents for those kind of things that you have to get complete. But it's really not that hard. It's just a longer process with these larger deals. If it's a $200,000 or $300,000 deal, those are a little bit easier. You can do them under the Express. There's a lot of non-bank SBA lenders that do the Express loans, and they're more kind of quicker, where you're going to get a faster response and things move a little bit quicker. But yeah, if there's no real estate involved, figure around 60 days to close. If there's real estate involved, it could be 4 or 5 months. You just never know, depending on the whole process and just how fast the seller gets you the documents you need, how fast the bank can move. Not all banks are. Some banks are faster than others, so it just really depends on the deal itself. But that's where communication is critical. It's just that the seller wants to make sure the deal is going to go through. The buyer's nervous. The banker's trying to be the middleman, and they're dealing with the underwriter. So it's just a process. What I really love about this, if you can find the right deal, you get 90% of total project costs, which includes working capital, all that stuff. It's not just the purchase price. All right. And then the other beautiful thing is you can get the seller to carry back 5% on full standby. If they carry back 5% on full standby, that's like leaving 5% of their equity in the deal. They can't make payments, or maybe it's interest only payments for the first 2 years. It used to have to be for the full life of the loan. Now it only has to be for 2 years. So now I only have to come in with 5%. So let's just say it's $1 million facility. It's a building that you're buying and the business. And it's $1 million, or it's $900,000, but with total project cost is $1 million. 900,000 comes from the bank, 5% on standby from the seller. So that's all I need to come in with $50,000. Well, you know what? The beauty of it is like, hey, you know, I just bought a short-term rental. I'm kind of broke right now, but this is a great deal. But I know Jordan has dry powder. Hey, Jordan, you're experiencing this. You're my mentor in laundromat facilities. I'll give you 15% if you come in with the $50,000 or 10% of the deal. You don't have to go on the loan. You know, you're providing equity. It can't be a loan, but if you become, you know, you own 15% of this entity, you can do that. So I was just able to close with zero out of pocket. You can do that all day long. Now, granted, I have to have the borrowing characteristics. And what does that mean? I need like a 660 minimum credit score. If I have any derogatories, they need to be explained with letter explanation. I have to be a U.S. citizen or a permanent resident alien. I can't be on an E2 visa here in the States. We have other programs for that, but it's not going to work for SBA. There's certain rules if you have any felonies in your past. Not to say you can't get if you're on probation, things like that. There's certain rules there. BKs, you can have BKs in the past, but it's got to be usually like 7 years or more. But if you have good credit, and then the other thing too is they're going to look at global cash flow. So we don't look at DTI like when you buy a house. They look at global cash flow. So as long as you don't have a lot of revolving debts, you know, like, oh, I have this, Range Rover. I'm making a $1,500 a month payment. I have a Mercedes. If you're not over leveraged, then you should be fine typically. But they will look at global cash flow. So those are the considerations.